All right, in this section, we're going to be talking about the skeletal system. So we're going to start off with an overview of the skeletal system. The skeletal system is going to consist of two types of connective tissue, bone tissue and cartilage. Now, we may also see ligaments. Ligaments are going to be formed out of a fibrous connective tissue, and they're going to join the bones together. So the skeletal system is made up primarily of bone and cartilage. However, we do have ligaments that are going to form the connection points between the various bones. So the skeleton is a framework of bone and cartilage that performs a variety of functions. It's going to provide a rigid framework to support all of our soft tissues. It also gives us a point of attachment for our muscles. This is what allows for the movement and control of our bodies. The muscles move, they'll contract, we'll see that in our next chapter, but without a point of attachment, they would just be contracting in place. Their attachment to the bones is what allows us to actually move our bodies. The skeletal system is also going to provide us with a measure of protections for the organs in our chest cavity or our skull. And another important function that you may not be as familiar with would be the storage of minerals and fat. The bulk of bone is made up of calcium and phosphorus, which can be broken down and used to replenish the body as needed. The human body has 206 bones that vary in size and shape. Most bones consist of both compact and spongy bone, in proportions dependent on the bone's size and shape. So compact bone is going to be the very dense outer layer of with very few internal spaces. This is going to be form the shaft of most of the long bones. So that'll be sort of this region right here. That'll be our compact bone. It's going to be covered by the periosteum, which is going to be this thin fibrous layer on the outside. The periosteum is what contains blood vessels, nerves, and cells involved in bone growth and repair. So this is going to be the region that is responsible for nourishing the bone and protecting that bone and helping to heal that bone. Injury to the periosteum, things like a bruise or even a fracture to that periosteum, can be very, very painful. And that's because that's where the nerves are going to be located. Spongy bone is going to be this lattice work of bones. We're going to find that right up here. It's going to be found in small flat bones like your skull, in the face, or near the ends of the shafts of long bones. So that would be towards the ends of these long bones right up here. In adults, the spaces of some spongy bones are going to be filled with red marrow, where the red marrow is going to be where we're forming our red blood cells, or really all of our blood cells are going to be formed in the red marrow. The cavity in the shaft of the long bones, so that would be this region right in here, is going to be filled with yellow marrow. Yellow marrow is a fatty tissue that's used for energy storage. So I don't tend to think of bones as living tissue. It's rigid and inflexible, and we typically only see it as dried white skeleton. But this really isn't the case at all. Bone is living tissue. It's made up of various small cells called osteocytes. So even though bone is considered living tissue, the bulk of it is going to be made up of non-living matrix. The matrix is hard due to the presence of minerals like calcium and phosphorus salts, but it also has resilience due to the presence of collagen. So it's got sort of a hard but also somewhat resilient flexible structure. Now the structural unit of compact bones is called an osteon. That would be like this portion right here. It's an osteon. Now the osteon is going to consist of osteocytes, which are just mature bone cells, and they're going to be arranged in concentric rings around a central canal. So it kind of looks like the rings of a tree, but a whole bunch of them. So here are osteons. Our osteocytes are going to be these little individual cells in concentric rings around that central canal. Each osteocyte lies within a lacuna, which is a small space within the hard matrix. The tiny canals connect the nearby lacuna and to the central canal. So we have all of these itty-bitty little canals that you can see here. These darker regions that are going to connect the lacuna to each other and to the central canal. Nutrients, oxygen, and waste can pass from cell to cell, traveling to and from the blood vessels that are found inside of that central canal. So this is how we're ultimately able to nourish and strengthen and support those bones with those blood cells and vessels. So cartilage, we're going to kind of break down the different components. We've talked about bone and its structure. Now we're going to talk a little bit about cartilage. Cartilage is not going to be quite as strong as bone, but it's going to be much more flexible. It's going to consist of a matrix that contains collagen and elastic fibers. There's also going to, that's the matrix. Now the cells that are found inside of cartilage are going to be known as chondrocytes. These are cartilage cells. They lie within the lacuna. Now, they have no nerves or blood vessels. They're going to rely on neighboring tissues for nutrient and waste exchange. This is what makes it very slow to heal. Without having a huge sort of flush or flow of nutrients, of blood vessels bringing nutrients and expelling waste, it's going to take quite a bit more time to heal torn or damaged cartilage. There are 3 types of cartilage. We have our hyaline cartilage. This is going to be found in the long bones, nose, the end of your ribs, larynx, trachea. Fibrocartilage, which would be those discs between your vertebrae and in your knee. And then elastic cartilage, which is going to be pretty flexible. It's going to be found sort of in your ear flaps and your epiglottis. Fibrous connective tissue, last structural component of the skeletal system that we want to talk about. So structural fibrous connective tissue, this will be things like your ligaments. This is going to be made up of rows of fibroblasts separated by bundles of collagenous fibers. This is going to make up your ligaments and your tendons. Ligaments are going to be responsible for connecting your bone to bone. Tendons connect muscle to bone at a joint. So this is also called an articulation. We're going to talk quite a bit about the connection between muscle and bone in our next chapter. All right, you should be able to list the functions of the skeletal system, summarize the structure of a long bone by describing the differences in structure and function of compact and spongy bone, and they should also describe the 3 types of cartilage and list where they might be found in the body.